How are y'all doing? Good. Oh, I'm also well, thank you for asking. I'm having breakfast with my kids, and these are my kids, right? Who has two thumbs and is the luckiest guy in the world, right? So we're having breakfast, and I'm feeding them this delicious puffed corn and high fructose corn syrup glazed cereal. And you can judge me if you want, but my kids love me. So we're eating this cereal, and if you know anything about kids' cereal, on the back of the cereal box, like, there's something to keep you engaged, right? Because the company wants you to keep the box, read the box, eat the cereal, read the box, eat the cereal, stay engaged so that you just eat the cereal forever, right? And then you have to buy more, right? So they want you to stay engaged with the cereal. So we're eating this cereal, and we look at the back of the box, and there's so much fun on the back of this box. Honestly, there is, right? So on the back of this box, we see these cartoon cereal characters who are having the most fun ever. I mean, they are skating, they are swimming, they are swinging, they're even flying, holding onto an umbrella. I mean, they're having a great time. Every character in the scene is having a really good time, except for one character. There's one character on this box who is different from all the rest, right? Is wearing denim, has headphones on, listening to music, and has his hat tilted a little bit to the side, right? If you can't really see it well here, let me just blow it up for you. So, right, this character is the only character on the back of this box who's brown, right? So I have to immediately, I'm an educator, so I have to immediately go into teacher mode and try to explain to my kids why this image is problematic, right? I have to explain to them that somebody mean put this on the back of the box, right? And it wasn't very nice. Maybe I'm making too big a deal out of this, but what is this communicating to my children about the role that they play or should play in society? We're surrounded by stereotypes, right? We see them in the news, in movies, on TV. They're on the internet. They're in video games. And yes, they're even on the backs of cereal boxes. And those stereotypes have a way of infiltrating our brains and infecting us, right? So that in our society, we tend to view black as bad and white as good. We tend to see people of color as violent. We tend to see women in liberal arts careers, but not math and science. We tend to form negative associations with people who are overweight, people who are of non-dominant religions, and people who are of a different sexuality or gender type than our heterosexual cisgender norm. And what's even worse is that these stereotypes have a way of making us act differently. If you are a part of a group about which there's a negative stereotype, it affects how you think and how you behave. And this is even more profound in situations where the negative stereotype is intelligence-based, especially if you are put in a situation where you risk confirming that negative stereotype. This is something called stereotype threat. So stereotype threat is the fear of confirming a negative stereotype. When you are confronted with a negative stereotype about your group and you are put at risk of confirming that stereotype, then it actually affects your ability to engage in the task that's in front of you. So let me give you an example. So take this negative stereotype. Women are bad at math. So a study looks at women who are good at math, like women who are really good at math, like women who are going to graduate school in math, good at math, right? Okay, and give them a challenging math test. But just before the test, you say to them, oh, by the way, this test has been shown to reveal differences between men and women. And what happens? Those women actually perform worse on that test than they're capable of performing. They don't achieve their full potential on that test. Let's look at another negative stereotype. Blacks are not as intelligent as whites. In one of the most interesting studies on this topic, researchers had college-age men engage in one of the most kind of intellectually challenging tasks you can think of, miniature golf. right? You know putt-putt, right, with the windmill and the clown's mouth, right? And so they have them engage in this 18-hole miniature golf course. But just before they start golfing, they tell the group, this is a test of strategic decision-making, right? So you can kind of see that's triggering an intelligence stereotype, right? Intelligence matters now to the outcome of this experience that I'm about to have. And what happens? The black men golfed worse than they were capable of golfing. Interestingly, in a twist on this study, another group was told that this is a test of natural athletic ability, right? So white men, we don't want to leave you out, right? You guys also have negative stereotypes, right? And so in that case, you can predict what happened. The white men golfed worse. What's happening there? What's happening in those situations? Well, if you think of your brain like a computer with limited operating space, right? If you fill up some of that space with noise, with fuzz, right, with other operations, then there's not as much space left to engage in whatever processes you want to engage in. And this is what's happening in the brain. When you're confronted with stereotype threat, it creates anxiety, what researchers call excessive cognitive load. And it interferes with your ability to access memory, your ability to perform at your peak capacity. And it's been shown to depress academic performance. In fact, it's been shown to affect students in elementary school all the way through graduate school in various studies. But I'll suggest to you that this matters beyond just education, and it matters anywhere where intelligence is at issue, anywhere where you feel like you're a minority, anywhere where you're not represented among the high achievers in your particular environment. So this should matter to every teacher, to every student, to every politician, every policymaker, to every employer, every employee, and of course to every parent and every child. Why should it matter? Because we can actually do something about it. So there are many interventions that work. I only will talk to you today about one. And the one thing that will affect stereotype and can really have the result of knocking it out is something called growth mindset. Growth mindset views the brain as elastic, as capable of growth, as capable of learning and mastering new things, rather than as fixed and as having some ability to do some things and some ability to do other things. A growth mindset, instead of saying that I'm not good at this, a growth mindset says I can learn how to do this. Right? Instead of saying that I screwed up on this exam, a growth mindset says I can learn from my mistakes and improve. Instead of saying I'm a failure, a growth mindset says with the right guidance, with the right kind of effort, I can do anything. I can master anything. So it's incredibly important for us to cultivate a growth mindset in those around us. It has been shown to improve the academic performance for those who are subject to stereotype threat. And I'll suggest to you we should be thinking about this at work, in the schoolhouse, in all of our social work and learning spaces, because it can make a difference. But what's really equally important is for us to cultivate this mindset in ourselves, so that we're no longer looking at a child and saying, oh, honey, maybe this isn't your thing. We're no longer listening to voices that say, I can't do this, or I'm not capable. But instead, we believe that they can. How can we expect them, by the way, to believe that they're capable of greatness if we don't believe that they're capable of greatness? So we have to cultivate this mindset in ourselves. And if we do that, if we cultivate it in ourselves, if we cultivate it in our children, in our coworkers, in our employees, in our students, then perhaps they can achieve their full potential. Because it's hard sometimes being in the minority. It's hard sometimes feeling like I'm the only black person in the room and whatever I say reflects not only on me, but on my whole race. It's hard being a woman who is in a science career and being underrepresented and knowing that every mistake you make is magnified. It's hard being poor and competing with those who have had greater advantages than you, and feeling like everything I do is going to be scrutinized, that they're just there waiting for me to make that mistake so they can say, oh, yep, there it is. That clouds the brain and it interferes with our performance. So I work on this with my students all the time. I work on it with my colleagues, but most importantly, I work on it with my children. And with my children, I try to teach them that every time they have a struggle, it's an opportunity to learn. That every time they face difficulty, that there's an opportunity for them to improve. That there's something in front of them that feels like it's a barrier, then they can persevere, and they can work through it, and they can succeed. My kids are woke. In fact, now they're in the cereal aisle protesting, So I guess now instead of having them look at the back of this box, I'll probably just give them oatmeal. Thank you very much.